computer. So, yes. Hi, Matt. How are you?
Good, Maggie. How are you?
Good, good. Good to be with you. This is Matt Mehaffey, our music director for Mendelssohn Choir of Pittsburgh. And really, as you know, I've been talking to different singers about
Mhm.
recent Beethoven's Ninth Relief. So, would love to hear from you some of your thoughts on. I think my first question for you would be similar to the others. Like, how many times have you performed this in your career?
Oh my goodness. You prepared me for this question, so I tried to go back and look at my records of this. I performed it several times as a student, and I remember actually when I went to graduate school at Westminster Choir College, that choir did a lot of performing with orchestras on the East Coast. And my very first performance there was of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, and that was the first time that I had sung it. And then throughout my career, I've prepared it for uh, performances with my university choirs. We've done it, I think, twice at the University of Minnesota. Um, when I've been there, I've prepared it for the St. Paul Chamber Orchestra. I prepared it for the Minnesota Orchestra. And now I done with the Pittsburgh Symphony and got to record it. So I think I added up, I've had a total of 8 separate experiences with it. I sung it twice and then kind of prepared it 6 different times.
That is so interesting. What do you think is it about it that is just makes it so ubiquitous that it's just so much part of the catalog?
Well, I mean, there's lots of discussions about, kind of what's in our canon and whatnot, but I mean, it is a great symphony by Beethoven, and I would encourage anybody watching this, and maybe Maggie, you could maybe even put in the comments here a link to Manfred's New York Times piece where he kind of describes kind of his take on it. But I mean, it's just a famous tune. So I think people know, I sent the recording to several of my friends who are not classical music people, and I said, hey, this is, something I did. And you might like to listen to it because I think you'll know the tune, you'll recognize the music. And, they listened to it and they all said, oh yeah, I know that. So there's a kind of almost like pop culture connection to it that people know the Ode to Joy theme. But it truly is an exciting piece of music. And it's, from my music history knowledge, it is kind of the first choral symphony that uses, or the first symphony that uses choir. Maybe that's a more clear way of saying it. Obviously, there were large works for orchestra and choir that predated this, but in terms of the genre of the symphony, this is one that uses the choir, and as far as I know, is the first one. Another piece that is a big part of the repertoire, which the Mendelssohn Choir has done numerous times, and I've prepared probably 6 or 7 times again as well, is the Mahler Second Symphony, and that's another kind of big favorite of kind of the symphonic canon. And interestingly enough, if today were the normal times and we had proceeded with what our schedule was going to be a year ago, today is the 125th anniversary of the Pittsburgh Symphony. And today we would have been performing at Heinz Hall Mahler's 8th Symphony, which is kind of the end, maybe the end of that kind of lineage of romantic symphonies with chorus, known as the Symphony of 1,000. And that has never been performed in Pittsburgh and was supposed to have been performed today in Heinz Hall. And we had a whole group of college choirs and civic singers who were going to join us with the hope of the choir being 400 large. But alas, that plan was maybe the least COVID-19 friendly plan ever conceived of. So we're not performing that today. But I think all of these pieces that are favorites of kind of symphonic audiences, these choral orchestral pieces really find their footing with the Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. So it's kind of the beginning of the genre. There's a tune that has kind of pervaded our culture, in many ways through hymnals. That Ode to Joy tune is in many Protestant and Catholic hymnals, so it's kind of gone around the world in that way. I think also the text, of kind of the brotherhood of man, essentially, really rings kind of universal. And this piece has been used for many kind of celebratory events too, marking important kind of meetings between nations, or prompting, or marking an important anniversary or a celebration. So it's a piece that you know it is ubiquitous, but I think there's it's also a good piece. There,
Reason
I don't think, yeah, right.
for sure. Okay, so I'm going to take you on another track here. This is a question so that I've always wanted to ask you. Um, what is it like preparing a choir like the Mendelssohn for something like this, and then having it conducted, by Maestro Honeck? Like, what is that? What is that like? What's the process?
Sure. Yeah, it's an interesting process. I'm very fortunate to work with Maestro Honeck, because I just have an incredible amount of respect for him as first as a person. He's just a genuinely nice person, but also as a musician. And I've prepared for lots of people in the past, and sometimes that's kind of a frustrating thing, because it's like you do all the work as the choir director and you get your choir to do all the things that you would want them to do, and then you don't get to conduct it, and it kind of there's a little bit of a letdown from the perspective of the chorus master, because you feel like, oh man, I did all this work and I love conducting and I love making music with my choir, but I don't get to do that in the actual performance. And but in the work with Maestro Honeck, I mean, I feel each and every time I do preparation for him and with him, that I learn something about the music. And because I feel he takes a lot of, there have been times in a rehearsal where I watch him ask something of the choir. And I mean, honestly, I think, well, why would you do that? That's a weird thing to ask. Or he'll find some little thing that, in the midst of a, let's say, hour-long piece, is such a small detail, and he just hones in on it and he's insistent upon it. And I'm sitting there looking, it's like, he's not going to make it through the whole piece, in this rehearsal. Why is he spending such time on this little facet of it? And that, you get a little nervous sitting in the background. And but then as soon as the choir does it, then I almost can't hear it the way I heard it before it. There's he really does transform pieces because he has great insight into them, and he knows, I think he's very true to himself in the way that he decides, like, these are the things that I believe in about the music, and I'm going to find these little presence, if you will, like, in there to give to the audience or to give to the musicians. And I think it really inspires the choir. And, from my perspective, it really inspires me, and I'm always sitting there with my score and writing down little notes or sayings that he says. So, the next time I come back to one of these great masterworks, whether it be with him conducting, then I would know kind of what he wants there. Or if I'm preparing, let's say, Beethoven 9 for somebody else that comes to Pittsburgh to do that, or anywhere else, I have that kind of nugget of insight from him. And I just respect his musical choices and judgment so much. So that part is really great. But at the same time, there is that kind of sadness that one feels, where you kind of give up what you've been working with to somebody else. And I mean, I think that's natural. And I have many friends across the country who do this as well. My friend who I work with at the University of Minnesota, Kathy Romy, she does probably 80 to 90% of the work she does is preparing for other people. And she and I have talked about that kind of almost sense of loss, or, maybe it's like FOMO, is a fear of missing out. Is that what they call it? So, you miss out on the musical moment in terms of being a part of it. But there is a great joy of sitting in Heinz Hall and watching the choir, just knock it out of the ballpark. And usually one of my favorite parts is usually I sit out there until maybe the last 2 or 3 minutes of a piece. And then I go out and I walk back around the back of the stage and I stand behind the choir there, and you can just hear them just bringing it, right? Whether it's the end of Damnation of Faust, which is this huge thing, either near the end or the end of the symphony, the Ninth Symphony or the Mahler Symphony. It's just really exciting to stand back there and feel the energy of the choir and the orchestra, and then to hear the thunderous applause from the audience is really, quite satisfying in that way as well.
You have like you have like a special back row seat in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of go, someday when we come back, we should do like a little backstage video of this for, so people could see how the choir risers, they look real fancy out in Heinz Hall, but if you get below them, they're glorified, football bleachers or something, and but you could really feel the
Sound.
the sound. Yeah, you can kind of stand under the bleachers and feel, hear all of the orchestra and all the 100 voices or so kind of really letting it rip. It's pretty exciting.
Cool, cool. Well, hey, here's another question for you.
Mhm.
So the Mendelssohn and the PSO have been together for almost 100 years. And yeah, what is it like? I mean, and you have been with the Mendelssohn, what is it, 5 years now?
This is my 5th year, although I haven't seen the choir in almost exactly a year. So it's
Right. Yeah.
yeah, how you count that, I don't know, but technically this is my 5th season. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we count that. So you've been with it 5 years, and then there's singers who have been with the Mendelssohn for decades. Like, tell me about that dynamic of having it be sort of new and old at the same time.
Well, I think there's an exciting heritage and history there of, the Mendelssohn and the Pittsburgh Symphony singing and performing together. The Mendelssohn's been around for, I 100 over 110 years, and I'm only the 7th music director. And so I think that there's a really, I that really struck me when I found that out. I mean, that's a pretty amazing thing. And so I feel deeply connected to the heritage of that, and being a native Pittsburgher, I find that really fascinating, and have thought, I know, like, my grandfather had been to the symphony, and I'm like, he probably heard the Mendelssohn Choir at some point, and what does that mean? I mean, I don't know if it means anything, but there's a certain nostalgia to that, which I find really lovely. Um, a few years ago, one of our singers, Margaret Groniger, retired from singing with the Mendelssohn, and she had sung for, well over 40 years in the choir. I don't remember the exact amount. And we had one of her friends kind of figured out, to the best of her ability, how many performances that Margaret had sung with the choir. And it was hundreds of performances. Looking at all of the holiday pops and all of the messiahs and all of the, going back into the, I think, early 60s is when she had started singing. And there was something like some kind of crazy statistic that she had spent like a year and a half worth of nights on stage at Heinz Hall performing, I mean,
Wow.
which, obviously if you're in the symphony, that's not a, for even 5 or 6 years, that's not really that big of a number, because they perform there so often. But for a chorister, I thought that was really spectacular. And we made Maestro Honeck aware of this, that she was singing her last performance. And he recognized her in front of the orchestra and kind of read off the statistics. And she got a standing ovation from the orchestra, which was really, so, I mean, just to think about all of the different conductors that she had sung with, all the different music that she had been a part of, and just really as an avocational singer, and really loving being in the choir. And I think that when I think about all of the, strife that has happened over the last year, obviously not singing in a choir doesn't seem like it's a huge sacrifice to make. But in many ways it has been for, so many of our singers. This was being in the Mendelssohn Choir, and being a part of kind of the family of the Mendelssohn Choir was really a central part of many people's identity. And it was the thing that they did on Wednesday night. Many people, this was their kind of expressive outlet. For many people, it was maybe one of their only social outlets. So I think that there's been a lot of hurt there that the people have felt, because they they've missed that kind of connection in their life. And so I know, I mean, I hear from singers all the time saying, oh, I can't wait to see everybody, and I think, which is they mean that they want to sing in the choir, but they also mean that they want to just be a part of the choir as well. And I think that's, with this recording, going back to the recording, I think with this coming out, there's been a lot of energy that the choir has heard it. And, I've heard from so many singers say, oh my God, we sound so good. I think that they knew it was going to be good. And I think the recording is really excellent. And I think the singers should be so proud of the work that they did on it. But I think it kind of just gave them another reminder, like, oh my gosh, I miss the feeling of being in this group and the feeling of, being with the musicians of the Pittsburgh Symphony and with Maestro. And then couple that with the message of, this brotherhood of man and the millions kind of coming together. I think it had maybe hit people in an especially poignant way during these times.
Well, yeah. I like how you point out the fact that a lot of people don't know Mendelssohn singers, by and large, are regular people who,
Mhm.
who happen to be super talented singers and really give so much volunteer time to rehearse, to perform,
Yeah,
to
we
load risers.
you're right. Yeah, lift risers, drive trucks to venues. They also like, going out and having a refreshment after the concert as well, which is, so
Yes, that's
the
first experiences.
but we've had uh, Mary Colleen, our chorus manager, at the end of the year usually tallies up kind of how many nights the Mendelssohn Choir is active between rehearsals, performances, dress rehearsals, and it numbers in the 80s or 90s. So it's like, somebody who's in the Mendelssohn Choir who wants to do everything, and not everybody does every project, but somebody who wants to do everything, might be there, 1 out of every 4 or 5 nights to doing something, and that's a significant commitment. She also tallies up, how many miles people drive to rehearsal, how many hours are spent volunteer, and we use that in some of our grant applications and kind of our, narrative about who we are. And but the dedication of the singers is just so great. And I hope that in many ways during COVID, some of us have gotten, it's comfortable. It's like, oh, I'm at home, it's not so bad, and what the reality will be when we can come back. Are people gonna be like, yeah, you know what, I'm gonna drive downtown on a Wednesday night when it's 24 degrees and sleeting? Hopefully, there'll be kind of a rally to do that, and a kind of just like a pent up exuberance to come out and sing and be together. But I've learned a lot too about ways that we can use technologies like Zoom. If I don't, a singer could probably say, well, I have a cold this week. It's like, well, you can still join rehearsal. We can have a rehearsal on Zoom, and you can make sure you're up to stuff at home. My university students haven't liked that too much because they can't use oh, I don't feel good today. It's like, well, just fine, be in bed and watch this. So
No more sick days or snow days for
no
us.
more snow. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Matt. Unless there's anything else you wanted to share, that's all I had, and I really appreciate your time. This has been fun.
No, I just encourage everybody to check out the recording. I think there's some, for even if it's a piece that really well and have sung a bunch of times, I think there are some really interesting subtle things that Maestro kind of coaxed from the choir and the orchestra in the fourth movement and throughout the whole piece, that are different. And I had some of my graduate students listen to it and said, oh wow, that was like totally different right there than I had ever heard it before. And that's what I think is exciting about making music with Maestro, because he always has a new take on something. So I'd encourage people, even if it's a piece to check it out. And just wanted to thank all the singers from the Mendelssohn Choir for working so hard at it. Can I point out one more thing, because I think it's pretty amazing. I think the singers probably remember this well. Near the end of the fourth movement, it's the last time that the quartet sings, and they sing kind of this almost like a vocal cadenza that is soft. And it goes into this kind of meanders into a different key in a way, and then there's this kind of really beautiful transition back to the home key of D major. But we had rehearsed this. I think we had 3 dress rehearsals. No, sorry, we had 2 dress rehearsals, Tuesday and Wednesday, and then we had 4 performances: Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The Sunday was a matinee. And then after the so they recorded each of the performances. So we had lots of different takes of the different parts, and the recording engineers are wizards at kind of, if they needed like one note that was not good in a take, they can kind of go and pluck it out. They don't like to do that, but we every day after the next morning after the performance, we would meet as a group, and I'd have to sit there with Maestro and the assistant conductors of the orchestra and the sound engineers and just kind of listen through and just mark, we still need to get a good take of bar 585 or whatever it was, So after the Sunday performance, we had what's called a patch session, where you just come back, you take a break, you come back on stage, and we had, I think, 45 minutes to kind of just go and do very targeted places to get additional takes of that. And Maestro asked the quartet to do this part over and over again. It's very exposed. It's very nerve-wracking. And they made the soprano, Christina, she had to sing this high B, which is for those who don't know, that's a very, very, very high note. That is a tiring note to sing. And he asked her to sing it softer, and he asked her to sing it with no vibrato, which those 3 things together are very, very difficult. She's an amazing artist and did it. And then he said, can we do that again? Can we do that again? Can we do that again? You could just see her face just kind of, well, I couldn't see her face because I was in the sound booth, but the choir said you could just tell by her body language, she was, oh my gosh. And she just kept doing it and kept doing it. Well, the result is really spectacular. And I would encourage anybody who has, might know this piece. This is one that on a recording, it might not always sound the best part, but it is so pristine and it is so beautiful. And I think, the choir, if they're listening to this, is probably shaking their head. They remember that moment in that patch session, because I think every single soprano on that stage was feeling for her and just also marveling at her ability to just do it over and over and over again. So that's one part where, I remember when I first got the recording, I wanted to know what that part sounded like, and the result is truly magical. And so that would be one little anecdote I would tell about the recording session.
Yeah, thank you. That is so cool. Well, thanks, Matt. Have a great rest of your day. Don't
You too, Maggie.
get buried in snow up there.
It's starting to melt here in Minnesota, but we've been in the 40s the last couple of days. But
balmy.
Yeah, so I heard it's warmer in Pittsburgh, right?
A little bit warmer, but actually somewhat similar. But yeah,
okay.
Yeah, we're melting down, getting ready for the next probably freeze up, because
Well, Pittsburgh has like 9 fake springs, right?
Exactly.
Every time you think that you're out of it, you get kind of slapped in the face. So good luck with that.